Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Um, okay, so I'm Himanshu. So today is your week 4 tutorial for the course Basics of Biology. Um, so the first question for this class is the only component in a nucleotide that has a net negative charge at physiological pHs. Option A is D ribose. Option B is cytosine base. Option C is phosphate base. And option D is nitrogenous base. So the only component that has a negative charge at a physiological pHs. Anyone wants to answer for this question? Anyone? Okay, then let's see the answer for this question. So this phosphate base is the only component in a nucleotide. We know that like what is nucleotide? There are three things in the nucleotide. That is one is phosphate, and second one is nitrogen base, and third is a pentose sugar. Right? Wait. So this one is the phosphate group. It has a negatively charged when this because one nucleotide attaches to the another nucleotide through the phosphate group only, right? And this one is the ribose sugar. In DNA, it is like deoxyribose, and in case of RNA, it is of ribose sugar. So there is a difference of this OH. So in second position, in case of ribose, there is no oxygen, and in case of like in case of DNA, there is no oxygen, and in case of RNA, like presence of this oxygen at the 2 dash OH. And this is a nitrogen base. Here nitrogen base in case of nucleotide, it is of two type. One is it is purine, and another one is the pyrimidine. In case of purine, it is adenine and thymine, and in case of pyrimidine, it is of guanine and cytosine. So the only component that give a negative charge at a physiological pH is the phosphate only, because this hydrogen will go and it will give the negative charge, O negative, right? So phosphate base is the answer for this question. So moving to the next question, the major force that stabilizes a double-stranded DNA in an aqueous solution is option A is base taking, option B is hydrogen bonding, option C is ionic interactions, and option D is none of these interaction. Anyone? Anyone know like what is the answer for this question? Any guesses? So in DNA, like what are the forces that stabilizes double stranded DNA? Anyone who wants to answer this question?
Miss hydrogen bond.
Uh, wait. Hydrogen, hydrogen bonding. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's see the answer for this question. So, base taking is the main force that stabilizes a double stranded DNA, right? So, like, this is a DNA. Here, this adenine always bind with the thymine with two hydrogen bond, right? And guanine binds with the cytosine with the three hydrogen bond. So this base stacking, that is one base, then other, like this base stacking are the main forces that stabilize, because here this is the hydrogen bond, right? But these base stacking forces that mostly stabilizes a double stranded DNA in an aqueous solution, not hydrogen bonding it in an aqueous solution. Like this uh, hydrogen bonding is very strong bond, right? For from that it can't like rise, twist and all. So the main force like which help in the stabilization and all is the like weak forces, like this base taking, like these also help in the stabilization, hydrogen bonding, but the main force is the base taking forces. So the next question is, sorry, the type of isomerism that occurs in the nitrogen bases which involve a shift in the position of hydrogen associated with either nitrogen or oxygen. Option A is structural isomerism. Option B is optical isomerism. Option C is tautomeric. Option D is conformational isomerism. You have it 2 minutes time. Anyone? So, in which type of isomerism there is a shift in the position of hydrogen? Okay, so let's see the answer for this question. Tautomeric isomerism is a type of isomerism in which there is a shift in the hydrogen atom. In case of structural isomerism, there is a difference in the structure. In case of optical isomerism, there is a difference in optical. Like optical isomerism means like optical properties is there, right? In case of that, there when there is a difference comes in their optical properties, then we call it as optical isomerism. Conformational isomerism means there is a change in the conformation of that particular, but in case of tautomeric there is a shift in the position of hydrogen, and we called it as a special kind of isomerism, that is tautomeric isomerism. Here that we can see that this hydrogen shifts to here, and this is a like COOH, CO, that is ketone group is there here, but when there is a shift in the hydrogen atom, and here we can see that this hydroxyl group will come. When this type of isomerism happens, like when there is a shifting in the hydrogen atom, and here we can see that, so the isomerism here we called it as tautomeric isomerism. So the right answer for this question is the tautomeric isomerism are the type of isomerism and that occur in the nitrogen bases and which involve the shift in the position of hydrogen associated with either nitrogen or oxygen, because there's a shift in the hydrogen in case of this oxygen here, right? So we called it as tautomeric isomerism. So the next question is, the term strand is not applicable to. Option A is double stranded DNA. Option B is double stranded RNA. Option C is single stranded DNA. And option D is single stranded RNA. Anyone? Okay, so the right answer for this.
Ma'am, can you please share the screen?
Wait. Screen is not visible?
No, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. Um, okay, sorry. Okay, now it's visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the term strand is not applicable to. Anyone wants to answer for this question? The term stand is not applicable to double stranded DNA, double stranded RNA, single stranded DNA, or single stranded RNA.
Double stranded RNA.
Okay, double stranded RNA. Anyone else? Anyone else who wants to answer for this question? Okay, let's see. You are right. Double stranded RNA is the right answer for this question. The strand is not applicable to the double stranded RNA. Right. We heard that double stranded DNA is there. We have a double stranded DNA humans. Single stranded DNA also in case of like some organism, the genomic material is made up of single stranded DNA. And also in case of viruses also. And single stranded RNA also strand is applicable because we know that in case of tobacco mosaic viruses and other plant infected viruses are made up of genomic material called single stranded RNA. So the term stand is not applicable to the double stranded RNA. So you were right. So the next question is, the major chemical difference that distinguish RNA from DNA is presence of a 2 hydroxyl group, absence of 2 hydroxyl group, and option C is absence of 3 dash OH group, hydroxyl group, and option D is presence of 3 dash OH, that is 3 dash hydroxyl group. So, like, what are the major difference that distinguish RNA from the DNA? So, here you to tell like what is the basic thing that is present in the RNA, not in the DNA. Anyone?
Is it option B?
Okay, let's see. Anyone else? Anyone else? Here you have two different RNA, like major chemical difference that distinguish RNA from DNA. Like in the question they asked RNA, you have to distinguish the RNA. RNA, that is ribonucleic acid, right? So ribo means ribose sugar and DNA means deoxyribose. Think again and then try to answer for this question. Like answer is in the statement only. Ribose sugar and DNA is deoxy, like deoxyribose sugar, right? So anyone? Okay, let's see. So
Option A.
Yeah, you are right. Option A is the right answer for this question. Because the major chemical differences that distinguish RNA from the DNA is here name itself defines, like RNA, that is ribonucleic acid. Here deoxyribo. Deoxy means D means removal, oxy means oxygen. So D removal, oxygen. So removal of oxygen. That means in case of DNA there is absence of 2 dash OH. But here we have to tell the difference that we distinguish RNA. RNA is ribose sugar. That means they have this oxygen on the on the 2 dash OH. So this is the 2 dash OH. This is the second carbon. This one is first, this one is second. So here we can see that there is a presence of oxygen, right? So presence of 2 hydroxyl group is the right answer for this question. And in case of deoxyribose, that is DNA, there is deoxy, that is D removal oxygen. So there is a no oxygen, right? So you are right that option A is the right answer. So moving to the next question, which is the most dynamic RNA that undergoes continuous turnover and act as a template for translation? Most dynamic RNA that undergoes continuous turnover and which also act as a template for translation. Anyone? Option A is guide RNA. Option B is microRNA. Option C is a tRNA and option D is mRNA.
mRNA, ma'am.
Okay. So one of you are saying mRNA. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, let's see. So you are right. That is mRNA is the most dynamic RNA that undergo continuous turnover and act as a template for translation. So mRNA is the most dynamic because it is constantly synthesized and used as a template for translation. What happens in the cell is first there is a DNA. Replication will take place and it will convert into the RNA, right? And basically which type of RNA, that is mRNA, and this mRNA undergoes the translational process and it will convert into the protein, right? So this mRNA is the most dynamic, which is constantly synthesized and used as a template for translational. And cell regulate gene expression by controlling mRNA level. Also, mRNA has a short life, especially in case of eukaryotes. So it degrades with the time. Like this is the characteristic feature of any mRNA. We know that inside the mRNA, what the main things they have, like so that it will have like stable. Because we know that in case of nucleus, their nucleus is also there which try to cleave those mRNA, right? So for that, what they have, this mRNA structure have a here 5 dash cap, like at the front end of the messenger RNA at the starting, so that it can prevent the mRNA from degradation, so that it will undergo continuous turnover. For the continuous turnover, they have this three regulatory element. One is the 5 dash cap, which is present in the front side of the mRNA. At the end, they have this poly-A tail. Here, they also have this poly-A tail, so that it will prevent it from the nucleuses. So it don't undergo in the degradation process. Why other options are not there? Guide RNA, we know that this is a small sequences RNA, which basically what they do is they help in the RNA editing. Like if we want to knock out any gene, like this is our genome, right? We'll provide the guide RNA. This guide RNA is complementary to our genome, and it will go and bind to the complementary sequence and it will cut it, like through the CRISPR Cas, we know there we there we synthesize this guide RNA, sgRNA, in case of CRISPR, and that we that Cas enzyme will act and cut that strand there. MicroRNA also, it's kind of a regulate gene expression, and tRNA, we know that what this tRNA do is this tRNA help in the amino acid sequences. We know that this is the ribosome, and tRNA mostly sit over the ribosome here, and this tRNA have a amino, like one is acceptor end, another one is the peptide end. This acceptor end will take the amino acid, and this peptide end will synthesize the peptide bond and join the amino acid like proline, then glycine, lysine. So it will form the amino acid. How it will form? Because inside the ribosome here mRNA will sit, and in this mRNA the sequences is there AUG, like this is the AUG, and AUG we know that it is a start codon, and it code for the methionine. So here this tRNA will bind this, like accept the amino acid sequence, and it will synthesize like AUG, right? This one is the methionine, and then it will form the methionine amino acids. Then again, it will form the peptide bond, then second amino acid, then third, like that it will form. So tRNA mostly help in the amino acid. So the right answer for this question is which RNAs undergo the continuous turnover and act as a template for translation is the mRNA, right? Any doubt? So the next question is the transporting sugar in insects found in hemolymph and in the walls of fungal spores is option A is trehalose, option B is maltose, option C is sucrose, and option D is lactose. So the transporting sugar in insect. So you have a 1 minute time. You can take your time. Okay. Anyone? The transporting sugar in the insects. Anyone who wants to answer for this question?
Ma'am, I think option A.
Okay. So one of you are saying option A. Let's see. Anyone else? Okay, let's see. So you are right. Option A is the right answer for this question. That is tree halos. Like this transporting sugar is present in the insects. So what is this tree halos? It is a disaccharide. Disaccharide means di means two, Saccharide means saccharide group, that is glucose molecule, right? We use for the glucose is the saccharide, like monosaccharides which have a one sugar, disaccharide which have a two sugar, right? Two sugar molecules, and oligosaccharide 2 to 10, and polysaccharide means which have a more than 10 units, right? More than like 4 or 5 units. So we call it as polysaccharide. So this trehalose is a disaccharide that is made up of two sugar group, right? Disaccharide. And how they link? They link by the alpha 1 is to 1 glycosidic bond. In insect, this trehalose is the main circulating sugar in the hemolymph, and it serves as an energy source. Like we have a like glucose, right? And like grapes have a fructose. So like that, in case of this, the transporting sugar in insect is the inside the hemolymph is the trehalose. In fungi also, this trehalose is found in the spore whorls, where it play this role. So this is like out of like context. So so the right answer for this question is the trehalose only, and this is the structure of this trehalose, where it form the alpha 1 is to 1 glycosidic bond, that is from one sugar to the like one carbon to the other sugar, like this sugar first carbon and this sugar first carbon, they will link through the alpha 1 is to 1 bond, right? So the next question is, the nitrogen containing structural polysaccharide is found in the cell wall of fungi and also in the exoskeleton of arthropods. Option A is pectin, option C is cellulose, option B is cellulose, option C is chitin, and option D is hemicellulose. So which one is the nitrogen containing structural polysaccharide is present in the cell wall of fungi? And also it is present in the exoskeleton of arthropods. Anyone?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone else? So one of you are saying kiting. Anyone else? Okay, let's see. So you are right that chitin is the answer. Very good. You are responding. Also, you are like you are telling me the very right answer also. Nice. So chitin, like which is present inside the cell wall. Here, this the cell wall of this fungi is made up of this chitin, which is a very hard materials, and provide the strength and shape and maintain the fungal structure of the cells, right? So the outer layer of this fungi is made up of this chitin. Also the arthropods, also we know that they're very high and thick layer outside, which is also made up of this chitin material, right? Which is a kind of polysaccharide that is made up of more than two sugars, right? Option like question 9 is, when the aldehyde group of aldose react with one of the secondary hydroxyl group present in the same molecule. Like if there is an aldehyde group of aldose and it will react with the secondary hydroxyl group, which this one is the secondary hydroxyl group, it will react and present in the same molecule. It result in the formation of acetal having linear structure, acetal having cyclic structure. Option C is hemicidal having cyclic structure. Option D is hemicidal having a linear structure. Anyone? Anyone wants to answer for this question? Okay, let's see. So the acetal having cyclic structure is the right answer for this question. Like when the aldehyde group, like of any aldose, like such as glucose, When it react with the second hydroxyl group, it form a hemiacetal structure, like acetal having a cyclic structure, like cyclic hemiacetal. Right, this is the sugar, and it will form the bond, and so that's confirmed that it will form the cyclic structure only, because we know that sugar is also made up of cyclic kind of structure, right? And their aldehyde group is reacting, so it will form only the cyclic structure, right? And now it's come to the whether acetal or like ketal. So because these is the aldehyde group, that is CHO, and this one is the second hydroxyl group, that is OH. So it will form the acetal group only in the ketones, because aldose have this CHO on first carbon, and this one is the hydroxyl group. So in aqueous solution, it will form the cyclization, that is confirmed. Because of the presence of this hydroxyl group, it will oxidize and it will form the aldehyde only, that is acetal only, not the ketal kind of structure. So that's why this reaction, this will give the acetal having the cyclic structure, right? So the next question is the two anomeric form resulting from the hemiacetal and the hemiketal formation is alpha and beta anomers. Option B is D and L anomers. Option C is alpha and gamma anomers. And option D is gamma and delta anomers. Anyone? The two anomeric form resulting from hemiacetal and hemiketal formation is. So the right answer for this
Ma'am,
question, yeah. Yes, am I audible? Um, yes, anyone have any doubt? Hello, hello. Okay. So the right answer for this question is the alpha and beta anomer. So this when aldoses from the cyclic hemiacetal or ketosis, it form the cyclic hemiketals. The anomeric carbon that comes from the aldehyde or ketone group become a new chiral center. Here it will form the anomer, that is alpha anomer is the OH group on the anomeric is trans to the CH2OH group. And in case of beta anomer, this OH group on the anomeric carbon is the cis. So this one is the alpha anomer in which OH group is trans to this CH2O group, OH group, because CH2OH upside and OH here is in the downside. So this is trans, right? We call this as alpha anomer, and beta anomer is when this is this at the same side, when OH group is cis to the CH2OH group, then we called it as beta anomer. So the next question is the only monosaccharide that lacks asymmetric center and therefore optically inactive is. They don't have any symmetry and optical inactive also. Option A is glyceraldehyde, option B is dihydroxyacetone, option C is fructose, and option D is erythrose.
ma'am, is it option B?
Okay, let's see. Anyone else? One minute. Hello? Yes, sir. Hmm. Hmm. पहले जहाँ पे था मतलब कि हाँ, वहाँ पे ज़्यादा सही रहेगा ना, क्योंकि वो ऑब्जेक्टिव के साथ सही रहेगा। हाँ, हाँ, राइट, राइट। हुँ, हुँ। हुँ, हुँ, यस सर। हुँ, ओके, ओके सर। हुँ, बाय सर, थैंक यू। Okay, let's see the answer for this question. Um, um, so you are right. Dihydroxyacetone is the right answer for this question. This molecule is the optically inactive because we know that for optical active at least one chiral carbon should be there, right? But in case of dihydroxyacetone, it's not optically active. It's have a, like four different for optically active for optical active it needs like at least one chiral carbon is there. And what is this chiral carbon is when they have a, like four different groups, right? So when the carbon bonded to four different group, then it will give the chiral carbon and it will rotate the plane polarized light either to the D and L, and it will give the D and L configuration, right? So in case of this dihydroxyacetone, this is like CO, and it have a like CH2H and COH. Both C1, this one is the first carbon, and this one is the second carbon, and this one is the third carbon, right? So this second carbon that is carbonyl group is not a chiral center because it it have a same group on the first carbon also and on the second carbon also. It's identical. That means there is a no symmetry, right? They have a like same exact same. So that's why they lack this chirality because they don't have any like four different group. That's why this dihydroxyacetone don't have any kind of optical rotation that make it optically inactive compounds, right? So that's why it lack the asymmetric center, therefore it is optically inactive. So you are right, that is dihydroxyacetone is the right answer. So the next question is the repeating unit of cellulose is called. Option A is trehalose, option B is maltose, option C is cellulobiose, and option D is sucrose.
Option C, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Option C. Anyone else? You are right. Option C is the right answer. As the name also suggests, that the cellulose that is made up of cellobiose. So you are right. So this is the structure of the cellobiose. They have this repeated unit of cellulose. Here we can see that. Right. It is a kind of polysaccharide. So the next question is the low molecular weight soluble lipids that can be transported in the blood plasma without the requirement of any transporting proteins. So low molecular weight, here what, and also the soluble lipids, and also because we know that lipids can't go like that, right? In because we know that our body is made up of 70% water, And here it's saying that the it's very low molecular weight, and also this is a soluble, and without the help of any transporting proteins it's moving in the blood plasma. So what is this? Option A is triacylglycerol, option B is phospholipids, option C is ketone bodies, and option D is sphingolipids. Okay. So the right answer for this question is ketone bodies, including acetoacetate. Ketone bodies are the very, like, it's very small in weight, so it can like freely form without the help of any transporting proteins. These are the very low molecular weight soluble lipids, including the other ketone bodies. Like example of this ketone bodies are, they say, like acetoacetate, beta hydroxybutyrate, acetone. These all the ketone bodies are produced in the liver during fasting or during carbohydrate restriction. Then this ketone bodies will start forming. And we know that lipids are not like water soluble, right? And they require some transport proteins like lipoproteins. But these ketone bodies are water soluble. Why? And because they are very very low in weight, and it can, because of that, because of why they can freely form in the bloodstream to the tissues, where they can be used as an alternative energy source, particularly by the brain and muscles, because it will go with the like long fasting periods. So in that time, like that time, this liver will start this producing this ketone bodies, so that our mind or that our this muscles can use this ketone bodies as an energy source. And they are very low molecular in weight, and also they can easily transport by this like through the blood plasma without any uh, without any this transporting protein help, right? So the next question is the molecule involved in the aggregation of platelets in the first stage of blood clotting is, during the first stage of blood clotting, when the blood just start forming this clot, like which molecule involved in the aggregation of these platelets? Option A is glycokinase, option B is prostaglandins, option C is leukotrienes, and option D is thromboxane.
Ma'am, I think option D.
Okay, anyone else? So you are right, very very good. Thromboxane is the right answer for this question. This thromboxane is a lipid molecule, and it derived from the arachidonic acids by the Cox pathway. So this thromboxane, it's derived from this arachidonic acid, and which is derived from this COX-1 and COX-2, and it plays a very crucial role in the this platelet aggregation, because this COX-1 and COX-2 enzyme activate this TXA2, and it will promote the platelet aggregation. Other than that, it will help in the vasoconstriction and also to promote the arteriosclerosis during the first stage of the blood clotting. So this function of this thromboxane is, first is the promote the platelet aggregation, and this is the vasoconstriction also, and enhance the clot formation, right? So that's the molecule like which involved thromboxane. So the next question is Niemann-Pick, a lipid storage disease, is caused due to the deficiency of which enzyme? Option A is alpha galactosidase, option B is beta galactosidase, option C is sphingomyelinase, Option D is glycosidase.
Option C.
Okay. Okay, option C is sphingomyelin. So this is the Neumann-Pick disease, which is a lipid storage disorder, and it is caused by the abnormal accumulation of sphingomyelin and other lipids in various tissue, particularly in liver, spleen, and brain. Okay, so there are three types of. You are right, huh? Sphingomyelin is the right answer, and there are three type of Neumann-Pick disease, that is type A, type B, and op- second one is the type C. So this type A is it is caused by a deficiency of this acid sphingomyelin, and that will leads to the sphingomyelin accumulation. And type A is the very severe form of neurological form, and type B has a little or no neurological involvement. And type C is caused by the mutation in NPC1 and NPC2 gene, leading to the defective lipid transport rather than the enzyme deficiency. Right. So this is type C is caused by the mutation in these genes, and type A and type B caused by the deficiencies in this enzyme, right? So which one? That is sphingomyelin enzyme. So it is a kind of lipid storage disease that is caused by the deficiency of this enzyme, that is sphingomyelin, right? And which type of, like, type A and type B? Like if in the question it mentioned, like, because it's a like general question and there is a no NPC1 and NPC2 genes, that's why we take it as like type A and type B, and it is because of this deficiency of this enzyme only, that is sphingomyelin. But type C is because of the mutation in these two genes which help in the formation, that is NPC1 and NPC2. So because of the mutation in these genes, this will like it will start like leading to the defect in the lipid transport. So that's why it's a kind of lipid storage disease. And the next question is, the immediate precursor for cholesterol is: option A is cholesterol, option B is 7 dehydrocholesterol, option C is ergosterol, and option D is lenosterol. So what is the immediate precursor for cholesterol is? Anyone?
Dinosaur, ma'am.
Okay, anyone else? Immediate precursor, here they are asking like just before the formation of the cholesterol there is a immediate precursor. It's a, like, we have, it's a remember question. So um see, this lenostrol, it's not an immediate, I mean lenostrol is also, you are kind of right, but here it's asking in the question is the immediate precursor, right? This lenostrol also is there, but it's not the like immediate structure just before that thing, right? It's uh, because in the question they are asking the immediate precursor, that's why the right answer for this question is this 7 dehydroxycholesterol, because just before the cholesterol this 7 dehydrocholesterol is there. Len- this lenosterol is two step back, right? So both are used, like lenosterol also and this 7 dehydrocholesterol also, but the immediate precursor is this one, 7 dehydrocholesterol. Okay. The next question is, the end product of protein catabolism in human is? Protein catabolism end product. Option A is uric acid, option B is urea, option C is glutamine, and option D is ammonia.
Urea, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone else? So one of you are saying urea. Okay, let's see. You are right. Correct. Urea is the right answer for this. So the end product of protein catabolism in case of human, we have a like urea, the end product. Uric acid is generally present in case of reptiles and all. Ammonia in the fishes, and glutamine also we don't have this. This is also in the lower invertebrates. So we have this urea. The end product of our like protein catabolism is the urea. So you're right. um, Uric acid, as I already mentioned, that is in the reptiles. Ammonia in the fishes. It is also in the lower invertebrates. So how this is urea? This urea forms here is that this is the amino group, right? Amino acids, amino acids, amino group, and this amino group will go and will through the urea cycle. This urea will form. So that urea is the end product of the protein catabolism. So the next question is the Krebs cycle take place in option A is mitochondrial stroma, option B is cytoplasm, option C is mitochondrial outer membrane, option D is mitochondrial matrix.
Mitochondrial matrix, ma'am.
Okay, anyone else? Krebs cycle take place in. Okay, you are right. That is Krebs cycle take place inside this mitochondrial matrix. So here this is the matrix of the this mitochondria, and inside the matrix this Krebs cycle will take place. uh, Question 19, this is the net balance of ATP produced for oxidation of one pyruvate. We know that glucose, first the glycolysis will take place, right? There, from glucose to pyruvate will form, and after the pyruvate, like how much ATP will produce from one pyruvate molecule. Here they are asking, and from one pyruvate molecule. We know that glucose to pyruvate, two pyruvate will form, but the net balance of ATP produced for the oxidation of one pyruvate in Krebs cycle is option A is 10, option B is 30, and option C is 8, and option D is 6. So, which is the right answer for this question? Okay, let's see. The 10 is the right answer for this question. For one pyruvate molecules, 3 NADH will form, right? One FADH2 and one ATP, like one GTP that is equal to one ATP and one NADH. We know that 3 NADH means 2.5 ATP, and one FADH2 will give rise to 1.5 ATP, and NADH will also give the 2.5. So total 7.5 plus 1.5 plus 1 and then plus 2.5, then total is equal to 10 ATP. So from one pyruvate, that is from one acetyl coenzyme A, will form the how many ATPs? ATP, that is 10. Remember this, like from one pyruvate it will give to the 10 ATP, that is 3 NADH, 1 FADH2, 1 GTP, and 1 NADH. So the last question is, in glycolysis, PP is converted into pyruvate with the help of which enzyme? Phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvate, right? During the glycolysis process. Option A is enolase, option B is pyruvate kinase, option C is hexokinase, and option D is aldolase.
Option B, ma'am.
Okay, option B. Anyone else? Okay, let's see. You are right. Option B is the right answer for this question. Very good. Like almost you answered like very right. Except I think one question. Nice. So this PEP, that is phosphoenol pyruvate, is converted into the pyruvate with the help of this pyruvate kinase. So here, like I don't need to explain because it's like we have to remember this. This is a name of an enzyme. That's all you can like you can remember by this. Like this is phosphoenol pyruvate, and it is converted into pyruvate. That is removal of phosphate group, and removal of phosphate group is through the kinase enzyme, right? And it is converted into the pyruvate, phosphate enol pyruvate to pyruvate. That means pyruvate and kinase, which involve in the removal of phosphate, so pyruvate kinase. So you can think little bit and then you can guess, and like in the from the question only you'll get the answer, right? Phosphoenol pyruvate, we know that removal of phosphate is through the kinase, and it is converted into the pyruvate. That means pyruvate kinase. So pyruvate kinase is the enzyme which convert this phosphoenol pyruvate into the pyruvate, right? So that's all. Any doubt? If there is no doubt, then okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.